The Northtown News Magazine is brought to you in part by the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation, caring for the families of slain and seriously injured officers.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine. Don't get snippy with me.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. These are my red scissors. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, sweet home Chicago. 224 446. Come on, baby, now get your business fixed. Come on, honey, don't you wanna go back to the lemon light?
Hey there, I am really Marty Levinson. Don't let anybody fool you. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine. A presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at www.ntnm.org. Community policing, we want to thank all of you for participating in National Night Out in the 24th District. We had a great crowd. We had nearly 100 people in 2412. How many people did you have, Sonny? Sonny, he had over 100 at Greenbrier Park in 2413, and in his spare time, he's chairman of the District Advisory Committee of the 24th District. It is Jewish Chicago will be coming out for the election. So if you want to participate, please contact me. We'll come out right for the start of early voting, and happy to include you. And it's going to be pretty much, the last couple months before the election is going to be pretty much all election stuff. So, but we're cleaning out the, there's still some guests we wanted on. Somebody we've been wanting to have on for quite a while. We keep trying to make arrangements. For those of you who don't know, we only film like every 3 or 4 weeks, and we do 3 or 4 shows at a sitting. So it's not like, if we can't get you today, we can get you tomorrow. We're not set up for that. We try to maximize our time due to the vast amount of money we don't make on the show. And it is a pleasure to have the Alderman of the 2nd Ward, somebody who we had on prior to the election, and he beat about 10 candidates and a quality group of people, and he won soundly. And he's, you can decide for yourself, but I think he's been doing a very good job ever since. Alderman Brian Hopkins, how you doing?
Hi, Avi. Good to see you. Good to be back on the program.
First of all, my pleasure, and thank you very much, and congratulations in person on your victory.
Thank you.
And let's tell people where the 2nd Ward is if you figured it out yet, because it's the weirdest shape I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's actually easier to tell people where the 2nd Ward isn't when you look at the borders. But I do have an app on my iPhone that's tied into GPS that'll tell me when I'm in my own ward or not. And I may be the only alderman who actually needs that, because in many instances, I'll walk down a street, and one side of the street will be my ward, and the other side will be another alderman, and then I cross an intersection, and it flips over. So I do have some geographical challenges there. But I've become accustomed to it, and we work through it. The neighborhoods that I'm privileged to represent are good neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. So I'm very fortunate in that regard to represent the people that I do. But because I only have fractions of a neighborhood instead of the entire neighborhood, it increases the workload for me as an alderman. I have so many different community groups that I have to interface with, and so many issues that really cross the aldermanic border that we can't use that as an excuse. I can't say, well, that's on the other side of the street, so I'm not going to deal with that. I don't have that privilege. I've got to pretty much roll up my sleeves and get involved in quite a few things. But I'm very lucky to have a good staff that's helping me out. And I think first year in office, by and large, we've done a pretty good job, and people seem to be happy.
Yeah, I do enjoy dealing with your staff, by the way. And
thank you.
Particular former CAN TV veteran Steve Nikotopoulos.
Yes, one of my opponents that you mentioned.
Yeah, he was.
Yes. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. You were telling me before that you had what? It was like 11 people in the race?
It seems like it. There were quite a few candidates initially that were out there, kind of kicking the tires. But when it came down to it, only 6 actually filed the petitions and stayed in the race. And then out of those 6, it was myself and one other in the runoff. But since the election, I can honestly say that not only have I mended fences with my former opponents, but I consider them all friends to this day. And I don't want to speak for them, but I think that they would say the same on my behalf.
Excellent.
You know, we've got good relations, and you know, one of them in particular, I think she's not done with politics yet, and that was my opponent in the runoff. I think you may see something from her and one of my other opponents as well. I think they're probably going to seek another chance at a different office at some point, and I can't wait to support them because I think they'd be outstanding public servants, and I would be honored to serve with them in an elected capacity.
I agree. There were more quality opponents in your race than any other race in the city. And I just wish one of them would move into this ward and run here. I'd be very grateful.
Well, I felt that way during the campaign. I was like, why do I have to have so many good opponents? You know, I look at some other races, and, you know, you had some people that you thought you could probably beat quite handily.
Yeah.
Couldn't say that about any of my opponents. They all brought a lot to the table. And as I said, they've all stayed involved. One has since moved out of state for a job opportunity. But the others have stayed local, and they've stayed involved, and they're all community leaders in their own right. Steve, who you mentioned, actually continues to work for me. He was my chief of staff for my first year in office. He's transitioned out of that role. He's working for me part-time now, doing some of my community crime stuff, works with the CAPS program.
Nice.
And you mentioned National Night Out. We were involved in that, too. I have 4 police districts in my ward, so I had to go to 4 National Nights Out. But he's been very involved in that, and he's been a great leader on public safety issues.
No, terrific. Hi, Steve. Hey, I hope you're doing well. And whatchamacallit, also, well, Sean Tenner's another big fan of yours, by the way, one of my favorite campaign managers, and definitely the most creative judicial campaign manager around. He breaks all the rules. The guys he beats, wound up. But the next time they run, they hire him.
Absolutely. Sean Tenner, when he calls and I pick up the phone, you never know what he's got to say. And it's usually something interesting and something unpredictable. He connected me a couple of months ago with the Simon Wiesenthal Center.
Nice.
And they have a program that I want to talk about because I'm very supportive of this. It actually started at a school in my second ward, Ogden Elementary School, a few years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, prior to my becoming alderman. They had a problem with some very vicious teasing that was going on, and unfortunately it devolved into some anti-Semitic hate statements that were being made against young kids that are really not mature enough to know how to deal with something horrible and terrifying like that, and they didn't know where to turn. And now, thanks to the research and the work of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, there's an app for that, right? Because kids today, that's their first instinct. They want to know how to fix a problem if it's on their phone or if it's on the computer. That's what they're drawn to. So they've developed an anti-bullying app.
Wow.
And now if you are a target of harassment, hate speech, or any kind of unwelcome attacks, be they physical or verbal or in today's world online, now you have something to turn to and to get support and to have adults that will intervene when the time comes for you to take it to that level. And the initial response from kids is that they've embraced this. They feel like it's one more place that they can go to get help when they're faced with being targeted by bullies and by hate speech. So we salute them for this, and I'm very supportive of this program.
Wow, it's a different world because when I grew up actually in South Shore, and basically the way I had to handle it is I had to learn how to fight to stop getting beaten up. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I grew 11 inches in 1 year later, so I wasn't that big then. Yeah. So, I used to get beat up a real lot, so I had to learn how to fight. But it's a different day and age. And
yes,
listen, the less violence, the better. You were talking about Simon Wiesenthal before. There's something very unique from a Jewish standpoint that's about to be happening that I know that you were instrumental in helping Rabbi Moskowitz at the Chabad House with.
Yes, yeah. The rabbi's a great partner. I like his ideas, and he's got a good one that we're hoping we can get launched in the second ward.
Yeah, and we're talking about the very first kosher Giordano's.
Yes.
Which would be, it's interesting because I'm dying to try it. As a matter of fact, I had deep dish pizza from a kosher place on Sunday, and rather than, you can't put any meat on it because we don't mix meat and milk, but I use sun-dried tomatoes. That's about as close as I can come, and some mushrooms.
Yeah, we think the market's there to support it. The early indications are that this is going to be a very successful concept, and we're very supportive, and we hope to get it launched.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, because you have such a mixed bag where you are, by the way, the thing's supposed to go at, what, about 16-something North Milwaukee?
Yes.
So, you've got all these different neighborhoods, 4 different police beats. Are there wealthy points? Are there poor points? I mean, how does it break down along those kind of lines?
Yeah, I would say within the second ward there is a range of diversity. Although, with the recent property tax increase, we took a look at how that was hitting my residents in particular, and I found that the second ward is number 2 in not just in its numeric name, but also in terms of the amount of property taxes that are paid out. The number 1 ward is the 42nd ward, my border to the south. So if that's any indication of the aggregate wealth of the community, most people got hit pretty hard by that property tax increase because the value of their condo or their home or whatever it is has increased substantially in the last couple of years. So that is one issue that I have to contend with. But you have people who have lived in the area for many, many years. You mentioned the area around Milwaukee. There's still a Polish population there, 2nd, 3rd generation, that they've owned the house for that period of time, and they never envisioned that the value of the home would get to where it is and the property tax bill would get to where it is. And of course, there's no direct connection between your home's value and your ability to pay a large property tax increase. So I have to deal with that issue regardless of whether I'm talking to someone on the phone that has a 6-figure income or someone that's retired and has a fixed income and is really struggling to make ends meet. I've got both in my ward.
Yeah, there's ties. As a matter of fact, I actually don't have a car, but when I do, I do for a few days here and a few days there. I'll rent something or whatever. Or no, I'm not stealing one. But yeah, there's still. The one thing that always strikes me, and I was in your ward quite a bit, or at least it's hard not to at least hit it at some point when you're coming from downtown. If you're not taking the expressway or the side streets, near almost every single place is a Polish neighborhood. There's a Mexican neighborhood right next door. And I grew up like near South Chicago. And South Chicago was basically Polish and Mexican. I know everybody says Hispanic now, but, like in South Chicago it was Mexican. So, it's interesting, too, because I know some Cubans that hate the word Hispanic. Because they want to be Cuban, they're proud of what they are. Sort of like Asian, when you say, oh, we're an Asian bunch, to think that Indians and Pakistanis are in the same group as Koreans and Vietnamese and Laotian, it seems kind of weird. But you know what? It actually helps them bond a little bit from what I can see.
Yeah, it's not really a monolithic group. You have so many within the Latino community. Of course, the one thing that binds them is language, and we do have a fairly significant Spanish-speaking population in the second ward, mostly on the western part of the ward. So we do have Spanish speakers in our ward office that are able to take those calls. But I had a community festival last week in Pulaski Park, and I couldn't help but notice that we had a turnout from the traditional Polish community that's lived there forever. We still have St. Stan's Church is right there, one of the Polish parishes that has Mass in both Polish and in Spanish.
Cool.
And then we had, a large turnout of families and a lot of Latino families taking advantage of the pony rides and the inflatable bounce house and the other things that we offered. So it really was a snapshot of what the neighborhood used to be and what it is today and what it's likely becoming.
I'm still wondering if anybody's serving pierogi tacos yet with hot salsa.
We'll get that right after the kosher pizzeria opens.
That sounds good.
We'll go in that direction too.
Yeah. So is there any particular pieces of legislation that you've championed that you're especially proud of? Or, you've just been around for a little over a year, so I'm not trying to rush you. Because is there as much of a seniority pecking order in city council as there is in Congress, or?
Yeah, there is. Seniority is a factor. I think people look at their colleagues, with an eye towards working together on legislation. So if you've been around long enough, you have the ability to support other aldermen in their initiatives, and then you're going to expect that when your turn comes, they're going to support you. So in my first year, I didn't have the opportunity to build up a whole lot of that capital, but now I have. I actually did manage to pass my first ordinance.
Nice.
I've got several that are pending, several that are in committee, but I actually got one passed into law signed by the mayor, and that was an animal control measure to allow for our increasing population of urban coyotes that live among us in the city to change the policy of the city's animal control department, which had been to basically try to trap them, shoot them with a tranquilizer dart, catch them, and relocate them. But we decided that that was not only ineffective, but it was a waste of time and resources. And now the policy is to leave the coyotes alone, let them live their lives among us as wild creatures in the city. And the only time that animal control would step in and try to trap one or catch one is if it's a proven nuisance. If it shows some aggressive behavior, God forbid if it bites someone, which actually hasn't happened in the city. In those instances, rarely we would then intervene. But any other time, we're going to let the coyotes live because they're actually helping us control the rodent population in the alleys.
You know, I was going to say that you're 100. We do have coyotes here also. I'm 5 blocks from the North Shore Channel, and when things dried up a few years ago, they came inland.
Yes.
And coyotes really are scared of people. You know, it's like, don't try to friend them. You don't want them to become friendly with people because, you know, they're still, it's like 3 blocks from here. One of the neighbors reported that it was kind of cool. There was a coyote with a rat in its teeth, you know, marching down the alley about to enjoy its meal. It does help control rodents. I have a vegetable garden out back, and I use something called Repelzol, you know, to keep the squirrels away and all that. And it is coyote scent, if you know what I mean, in pellet form. And I go under the porch to you know, because every few weeks you got to put on a new batch. I go under the porch to get it, and I see a hole shoot out of it. And, you know, some of it eaten and all the rest. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. And then I realized if this thing, and it really works, so it really scares away, you know, the squirrel. I won't have a squirrel in the yard. The rabbits won't come near. And it had to be a coyote, you know, probably seeking a mate or something like that, who bit into it. And it was definitely weird. But, yeah, the rodent population, all these people, you know, people complain about the rats and stuff like that. And, you know, it's like, yeah, coyotes are really good for that kind of thing. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes, and Canada geese as well. Canada geese in the spring nest on the ground, so they actually lay their eggs in a nest that would be accessible to coyotes. And coyotes love Canada goose eggs as much as they love rodents. So during the spring breeding season, coyotes have a significant impact on lowering the Canada goose population, which is already out of control. I mean, if you go on the Lakefront Trail right now, you know, you'll see Canada goose droppings everywhere. It gets all over the trail. It gets on your shoes. If you're barefoot on the beach, it gets on your feet. And without coyotes, some estimates are that the Canada goose population in Chicago would be as much as 50% higher, and it's already too high. So they're really helping us out in that aspect as well.
Yeah, I know that Indian Boundary Park used to have a problem, and the amount of poop, you know, bird poop in the pond over there basically killed all the fish that were in there.
I didn't necessarily aspire to be the city council's expert on coyotes, but it did happen. You know, we had a hearing, and we had experts from all over the country came to testify on the phenomena of urban coyotes in particular. And what we found is they're remarkably smart animals. And as you said, they're afraid of people. They really prefer to avoid us. You would live near a coyote den in the city of Chicago and probably never know it because they come out to hunt in the overnight hours at 2 or 3 in the morning. That's when they're most active, and they do their best to avoid being seen by us. So they're actually helping us, and they're also staying out of our way. So there's really no other reason to engage them or to try and catch them or trap them. We should just really live and let live. They're a part of the urban environment. And also I think it's an indication of the fact that our environment is on the upswing. You know, after years of pollution and years of abuse and degradation, we've gotten a lot smarter about keeping the air and the water clean. Still have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of improvements to make, but we're going in the right direction instead, and you're starting to see evidence of that with wildlife recovering.
No, there's no question about it. As a matter of fact, there's a river walk not far from here, about a couple miles, and you walk along there, it's just unbelievable what you'll find there. Oh, and as a matter of fact, Terry O'Brien, when he was president of the Water Rec, took Sonny and I on a tour of the North Shore Channel on PC1, which is not politically correct one, but pollution control one.
Yes.
Which is kind of like a Navy U-boat, actually. And we saw somebody catch a 5-pound carp, and I don't think I would want to eat it, but the amount of wildlife, like all the birds and the egrets and turtles and beavers, people have no idea how much wildlife there is, and that water is getting cleaner. Although, frankly, the idea of going swimming, people don't think about swimming in the canal because each step is a 10-foot drop. That's number one. It's not a natural shoreline, and you'd really have to dredge the bottom for all the industrial waste over the years if you really wanted to make it like that kind of waterway.
Right. It took more than a century to cause the damage. It's certainly going to take a long time to clean it up, but we are moving in the right direction, and the river is a good example with the new disinfectant program. That was a long time coming, and it was frankly something that a lot of people in the Water Reclamation District, including President O'Brien for a number of years, wasn't convinced that it was worth the price tag because it's a very expensive process. But now we're doing it, and I think in a couple of years we can evaluate it and see what the river quality has done since disinfection, and I'm predicting that 2 to 3 years from now, people will look back and say it was a very wise investment, that really you can't put a price on clean water.
Well, Terry's a really good friend and a frequent guest on the show still, even though he's out of office. And you know what? He's actually warmed up to the idea much more because he was dead set against it.
He was, but he came around to his way of thinking, and actually he was doing his job as a fiscal watchdog. It wasn't that he's against clean water. Nobody's against clean water. He just felt that in a cost-benefit analysis that the price tag was so extraordinarily high for this type of technology. It's not a simple process. But over time, like anything, the technology advanced and the science advanced and the cost came down. So it came down to a point where it was a little bit more affordable. And I think that was one of the factors that convinced Terry O'Brien.
Yeah, I think it came down
maybe it
close to
wasn't such a bad
$100 million.
idea. Absolutely, yes. So we're doing it now, and we're actually phasing it in throughout the entire Water Reclamation District system. So there's a variety of ways that you can do disinfectant, and chemical disinfectant, and ultraviolet rays, and other things. And we're using them all now. And we'll see the effect that it has on the river in a couple of years. I think you'll see a return from a variety of fish species that have been missing for a long time. And that's going to be one indication that we're on the right track when you see more wildlife and you see more fish.
Yeah, they're up to 69 species. When Terry first started coming on the show, it was about 23 years ago or something like that. He first became president. It's approximately right, not exactly. There were something like 21 or 22 varieties of fish, and they're up to 69 now. We're still hopeful for the wild gefilte. You're not Jewish, so I'll clue you in. Gefilte fish is actually ground fillet of fish that's formed into little cakes and boiled and seasoned. So there is no such fish as a gefilte. But it's sort of like an inside joke amongst Jewish people. Have you? Oh, you went fishing. You're going fishing for gefilte. So, if you want to go fishing for gefilte, go to the freezer section of the grocery store. That's basically where you're going to find it.
Well, there was a famous quote from Mayor Richard J. Daley years ago. I think it was in the early '70s when he said, someday you're going to see office workers take a break from their job in the Loop, and they're going to walk down to the Chicago River and they're going to go fishing. And he was widely mocked for that comment. I mean, they laughed at him for that. So if he were here today, he would get to play the "I told you so" card because he was right. That's what we're seeing. We actually have the Riverwalk now in the Loop, and it's a recreational attraction. People are down there dining, they're enjoying a glass of wine,
and very
fishing
fancy
and
restaurants,
kayaking.
And it's
Absolutely.
highly prized real estate. It's funny. I spent one semester at Central Y because I was trying to figure out where to go to school, and my best friend went there, so I figured I'll follow him. One semester was plenty, but I had a teacher whose father was actually Joe Woods, who was the sheriff for a while.
Oh, yes.
except his son was like, you know, a complete long-hair hippie, the total opposite of Joe Woods.
Yes, rebellion in the family.
Absolutely. And listen, most families have that kind of thing. It's common. And it was located on Wacker Drive. And he would hold class on the banks of the Chicago River, which didn't smell very good, look very good, but he just thought being outside was a better setting. And I take a look at it now, and it's like unbelievably nice. It really is. I don't go swimming there, but you know, there's still problems, but it is so much more presentable. When I was a kid, I grew up in South Shore. I used to take the bus to go to school on the north side because that's where the Jewish high school was. There'd be a black cloud over downtown. There was a lot more manufacturing in those days also. And, you know, we actually had smog in this city, and thank God that's disappeared. There's been a lot of great steps along those lines.
Yes, and that's one thing I'm also involved in right now is to propose a zoning change to remove the planned manufacturing district designation from one area in particular in the Second Ward that has lost so much manufacturing over the last decade or so that it really doesn't make sense anymore to have a special zoning designation to protect what's there. And it isn't that we don't want to see jobs, it's just that the new manufacturing, if you will, isn't the old smokestack and loading dock type of factory that we think of. Now it's Google or Facebook or a technology innovator or an incubator. And that is the new manufacturing. So we need to change our zoning designation to reflect that. And of course, the advantage is that type of employment center is much easier on the environment than the old heavy manufacturing that used to characterize those blue-collar labor jobs in the city of Chicago.
Yeah, even in the printing business, and I still do a certain amount of graphics and printing and stuff, but when I first ran Jewish Chicago, I got my own typesetting equipment. I lost money on Jewish Chicago. My whole livelihood was the printing and graphics and all that. And although I never owned a printing press, the chemicals, the smells, even in that field, the technology has changed so much that, you know, these things are using high-speed, fancy computerized duplicators. And rather than have to have these developing chemicals, everything's in a computer. I used to have the EPA come by to see how I disposed of my chemicals to develop the typesetting paper. And now I don't, you know, when I publish Jewish Chicago, I press a button when I'm through. I send it to Peoria where I printed and have a truck come deliver it, and bang. It's just so easy, it's not even funny.
Printed on recycled paper, I'm assuming?
It probably is, because frankly it's cheaper. But, you know, like the plant there, it's whatever they use, but I'm pretty sure it's recycled because, I mean, they're so cheap. It's cheaper to get the recycled, that's for sure. You got about a minute if you want to mention anything we haven't talked about yet.
Well, you mentioned the National Night Out program, which was, we had a great turnout in the Second Ward too, and one of the things we're promoting now is the court advocacy program. As a result of that, we've got quite a few volunteers who want to sign up for that, and I'm very excited about that. Go to my website, aldermanhopkins.com. It's a way that you can get involved in protecting your community. The police are doing their job. They're making arrests when they see crime. But we as a community have to do our job too and stand up and say we support our police, we support the process. It's important to do that now more than ever because frankly the police are feeling very underappreciated, you know, with everything going on right now, the protests, the marches, and some of the unfortunate instances that have happened.
Extremely unappreciated.
Yeah, very much so. So we need to let them know as we seek to implement reforms, and they're badly needed reforms. We have to stop the kind of thing that we've all seen on the news in the last year. But that doesn't mean that we don't support our police while they're doing a very dangerous job. And
the fact of the matter is, given the fact that there's close to 13,000 of them, they can't. Anytime you get a group of people that big, you're not going to have everybody being perfect. It's just impossible. It's not in the cards.
I agree.
So anyway, at this point, I want to thank you very much, Alderman Brian Hopkins, Second Ward. Congratulations in person again on being elected and on all the different innovative things you're doing, and I look forward to seeing what you've got coming up in the future, and maybe even stopping by the ward and getting a slice of some kosher deep dish pizza.
All right. I look forward to it, Avi. I'll see you there.
Okay, thank you so much, and good luck.